so for this recipe, you mentioned just a little bit ago, we're just using a basic, this is one of those 100% juice, this is not like a juice mix.
Right.
And so this is really handy if grapes are not in season. We do have a lot of muscadines at the Little Rock Farmers Market. So you do have that extra step of, I think you got to blanch them to get the skins off, and then mash them and put them in the sieve with the cheesecloth to make sure that you're not getting any of the seeds or any of the skin in your jelly. And once you have that, what it's going to look like once you've gone through all that process, if you want to go through that, is what we're going to be pouring out and measuring into our pan for this.
Absolutely.
Right?
So be sure that you're following, because there are, for different fruits, there's such a big variety of the kind of things that we can. Make sure that you're finding a recipe that's appropriate and will tell you all those steps to go through. It's not a guess. You don't have to guess. You know, there are all these recipes. There are all these cookbooks now.
So this is a very simplified version. Again, you can pre-prep your own grapes of different varieties or muscadines and produce your own jelly liquid, or you could make that jelly liquid with any other fruit.
Absolutely.
Just make sure you have the appropriate recipe.
You should just go to the farmer's market and get whatever your eye falls on, and then you can find a canning recipe for a way to preserve it.
You can. And
so,
if you you guys probably have those recipes that you can download many of those from your co-op extension service website.
Yes.
Well, we'll make sure to put that up on the screen as part of our recipe so people have an extra resource for that.
That's going to be perfect. So our first step with our grape jelly, and like we said, this one's easy. We're going to measure 4 cups of grape juice. And then just like, oh, this smells so good. But just like before with the other recipe, and again, this isn't a standard thing. You want to make sure you're following whatever recipe is appropriate for your fruit, but this one does have 7 cups of sugar as well.
So 7 cups of sugar just goes right in here.
7 cups of sugar.
And it doesn't say heaping cups, so I'm going to assume it's a level cup.
We want to make sure that they are level cups. And this recipe, and again, this isn't a standard for all fruits to make jams and jellies, but it just so happens that this is the same as the one that we just did with the strawberries. So it says measure juice into a large heavy bottom saucepan, add sugar, stir well, which we're going to do, and then you put it on the stove and you want to bring it to a rolling boil for 1 minute. And again, I'm repeating myself, but we're going to stir constantly because of the amount of sugar that is in this recipe, and we really don't want it to burn and then ruin all the hard work that we've put into it. Just like we did with the strawberries, but it's going easier maybe, because we started with a liquid instead of kind of like a thick smoothie mashed potato texture. We're starting with the liquid with the grape juice. So the sugar, if you can see in here, it's completely saturated, so it's not absorbing all of the sugar that's in here, but that's why when we put it on the stove, it helps for that process.
Right, it'll melt the granulated sugar and then make that easier to become absorbed into the grape juice.
Absolutely. So now that this is probably as mixed as it can get without the heat, I'm going to go ahead and put it on the stove. And if we can get our hot water canner turned back on so that it has time to get to a boil, we're going to cook this, take the foam off, and then put this in the jars. Important note to make with these pots is I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but since they are so big and they have so much water in them, this wants to be one of your very first steps that you do whenever you're about to can. Before you mash up your strawberries or anything, you want to fill that with water. Again, just enough that whenever you set your cans in, it covers the jars completely. But it does take a while to get to that boil. So you want to make sure you start that a little earlier than you would everything else.
So we've already used this and there's still steam coming off. Do we need to go ahead and restart this one to make sure that it's got a good boil going when we're ready to dip our jars in?
Yes, we want to go ahead and start that fire. And all I'm doing back here is stirring, just making sure that this sugar and grape juice does not stick to the bottom. And whenever it starts to boil, we'll time it for 1 minute.
Okay, so we'll just keep doing our constant stir. We'll be back in just a minute.
Ranked among the nation's best value cities for travel and its most travel-worthy state capitals, Little Rock is known for its southern charm and hospitality. Request a vacation planning kit at littlerock.com and see why we say getaways are better with a southern accent.
All right, so our grape juice and sugar mixture has now come to a solid boil for about a minute. And we've continued to stir it. And one of the things that is important to note, and this happened with our strawberry jam that we were making, and we had to be very careful about our jelly mixtures, that as soon as it hits the boiling point, it's gonna boil up really big. So you wanna be sure that you're paying very close attention and that you're managing the fire that's under it. So you just wanna pay attention so that you can avoid that mess that we kinda had.
So Diana's gonna get our gel opened up, and again, we're not scraping the foam off yet because we don't have our gel in here. So we wanna wait until we put our gel.
And it's always handy to have a kitchen-specific pair of kitchen scissors, because you never know when you're gonna need them.
Cannot live without them.
That first package of gel opened up super easy. Despite the directions that said it was to be cut open.
Yes,
it still
it did.
opened
It
for
opened
us.
at the corner.
So I'll just ease this in here while you are stirring.
And again, this is our liquid pectin, and this is what helps us get that gel consistency, you know, that jelly is known for. That's how it becomes jelly, is that consistency.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm just stirring that in there, making sure there's nothing on the bottom of my pan. No sugar that's stuck whenever we were on the stove. Make sure that we're mixing in all that gel. And as you can see, it's extremely liquidy because it's extremely hot. So
right.
we still want to be very careful. So I'm going to kind of let it settle for a minute. We don't have much foam here. The strawberry does typically have more than the grape, but we still want to try to get it off as much as we can. And like, there's barely any here. And just to reiterate, I know I'm repeating myself, but this has nothing to do with the safety, with the quality of it, really. It's
with
complete.
The flavor, it's all about the look at this point.
It is all about the look. So I'm going to take this and just do like we did before.
Okay.
Or do you, I did this, do you want to try it this time?
Sure.
And it's really easy, but you're not digging in the pot. If you can see, we're just barely running the tip of that spatula across the top of this liquid just to get the foam, just to get that light colored foam. So we're going to check on our pots, and our water bath canner is at a boil. Let me turn it down just a smidge.
So as this starts to cool, because I started sort of dipping this off the top, it gets easier to control, to dip, and the liquid doesn't stir around as much. You can see how it kind of makes that sticky across the top. So that makes it, so I mean, you might even wait a minute. So see how that's all grouped together there? And
let
that's
it cool down a little.
Just a minute, because that really made it a lot easier and way more efficient on getting that out without stirring up the rest and spreading out what you've already kind of clumped over to the side. So that was,
because it's coming out really nice.
Yeah, that was a big scoop there. And what made that easier was just simply that it had cooled just enough to kind of stick to itself along the surface.
Right. So we're going to do the same thing like we did with strawberry. We're going to take our funnels, put them in the top, and looking at our recipe, we want to find and see where it talks about head space. So let me look through really quick and make sure that we do, right there, number 8, if you're looking at your recipe, it says ladle the hot mixture, which we're about to do, into the jars. I recommend using a canning funnel, which we have, until there is a 1/4 inch headspace.
So that's the same as the one that we had a while ago.
It's the same as the one before. It's pretty typical with jams and jellies that it's a 1/4 of an inch, but again, just check your recipe and make sure that you're doing whatever it tells you to do.
So I am probably a little bit OCD, and I would be that person who would stand here for entirely too long.
And try to get every piece.
So my question is, since I'm doing this, as this continues to cool, I don't know how much y'all can see. Let me turn this just a hair. You see how, like, the foam is pretty much gone except for this little bit over here, and I think we're okay with that because it'll stick to the side of the pan when we dip it out.
Yeah.
But you can see that this sugar, the sugary stuff on the top, as it cools, it's going to make a film. So do you need to continue to dish that film out or
you don't
out of
have
the way?
To. The film, yeah,
it'll melt right back in,
it'll
right?
melt right back in, but that's a sign that you need to start putting it in the jars since it's still hot, or else it'll turn to a big, sticky mess, which is not what we want.
All right, so I'm going to see if I can do this. Since it's not a first time thing this time, I'm going to see if I can do this a little bit more neatly.
You did great last time.
I do have my sponge here ready to go.
Okay, good.
Not quite prepared for
and
the
so
last
I'm
time.
moving even a little closer because this is so liquidy. What we're doing right now is looking, and because we've had a little practice now, so we're looking at our jars with the funnel, trying to make sure that we're hitting that 1/4 inch headspace.
Oh, so I've got a lot more to go. Again, I'm not used to this. I feel like I'm putting too much in because the little funnel does take up some of the space in the jar. So I'm putting in enough to where it really looks like I have filled this jar up.
Mm-hmm.
But when
it is, 1/4 of an inch is really not much at all. Now, a good point to note, if you see on the top of my jar, there are these bubbles. These bubbles will not go away during the water bath process. So if you don't want those bubbles there, you might get a spoon, you might skim it, smooth over the top of the surface, but it has nothing to do with the quality, so those are fine. All right, and I have one more jar left.
So each of these recipes make 8 half-pint jars.
Yes. Oh, and like we were talking earlier, you might be looking at grape jelly and thinking, man, I can get grape jelly really cheap at the store. But what this is a great recipe if you have never canned before and you're really wanting to kind of just build some confidence so that you kind of know what you're doing.
Right.
And even then, they make fantastic gifts. People love to get homemade canned gifts. If you have children and teacher appreciation or Christmas, great gifts for teachers, and you can tell them, hey, I help my kids so I know it's safe, but they really had a hand in making this for you, so it makes it personal.
Another thing that we were talking about at the beginning of the show was that it can be a little bit daunting because you have to have some specialty equipment that you're just going to have to go and invest in that. And the jars, I think a 12-pack of these jars was almost $9. Okay. And then you have to get the lids and the seals, and those were not very expensive. However, we had so many jars left over from my grandparents that my mother ended up just giving a bunch away to someone that she knew who still liked to can. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage people, because you're going to have to sterilize the jars anyway. I would recommend that you're going to have to buy the new lids and the rings. If they're in good shape, I think you could probably reuse them. But yard sales, estate sales, if you can find jars that are not damaged or don't have some kind of funky something in it that you'll never get clean, that is a great place to start looking for certain equipment that you might need to have. And you may even luck out and find more than just jars. I just know that there are lots and lots of jars out there that you can find without having to spend just a whole lot of money at a store for brand new.
Right, and you're absolutely right. When you're looking at these jars, what you really want to pay attention to is the jar as a whole, but especially this top ring. You want to make sure there are no chips, no like leftover rust from when they were canned before, anything like that. Make sure they're completely clean. And whenever you go to the store, mason jars are really popular now to use for decoration and just home cups.
They're everywhere.
Now you want to make sure that you're getting canning jars and not decorative jars, because there are jars that have a tinted color to them. And for fair people out there, those aren't accepted because they kind of deceive the eye. You can't see what actually is canned on the inside and if that's the true color of it. So you want to make sure that you're getting canning specific jars. But
and they are very well labeled on. I did not have any trouble as an inexperienced canner, really.
If it doesn't say canning, it's probably not, because you're right, it'll be clearly labeled.
Right. So I'm just getting these bubbles off just ever so slightly that you mentioned.
Yes.
Just so that when we open these in a couple of days, they are as pretty as possible.
And I'm going to move move this up.
Okay.
So that we are ready to start putting our lids on. All right. And these are still very hot.
Ooh, they are very warm. So this is one of those things where the kids can probably help you, but
you want to be extremely
older
careful.
kids with steady hands that aren't going to spill so much. Watch them very closely.
So I'll go ahead and put my lids on, and then I'll let you put your lids on.
Perfect.
And all I'm doing is barely touching the top of this just so that it can release from that magnet. Okay.
Whoops.
I guess I should move my jars over like this.
That's okay. I feel like we're a little bit more with our
got a rhythm.
Production line. Yeah. And this is only the second time. Obviously, you are an expert because you're teaching classes about this. But
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I try. Yeah, and we're just doing the same thing. We're not cranking that lid. We're just fingertip tight so that it has a little room if it needs to expand in the water bath canner. Yeah, and it needs to get that tight seal. Well, look at us. And
so efficient.
And and again, I'm looking at the recipe to make sure that everyone's able to follow along with us. But on number 12, this is our next step, is we're going to put these in, and it says bring the water to a rolling boil, and once a rolling boil has been reached, leave it for 5 minutes. So it's really not very long. So we're going to do like we did before.
I'm going to take this and we'll get it out so we can bring this again.
Perfect.
Open the lid away from your face.
Yes.
I mean, a steam facial is a great thing. You just don't want that in your kitchen while you're in the
not in the kitchen. Yeah. Especially if you have contacts or glasses.
Ooh, yeah, it's even worse. Okay.
So this isn't very hot, not at the top right now.
Right.
But it has been sitting in boiling water on the back, so you want to be kind of aware of that. And now we're going to take. Oh, actually, we could just pick these up. If you have this, if we had this still in our canner, you could leave it in there and pick these up and put them in while it's sitting on the edge of the rim of that pot, and then just lower it down. But so that y'all can see this, we're just going to lift, and they are really warm, but we're going to pick these up by the bottom. We don't want to touch. And it's okay if you did.
The lid.
But we want to try.
Just barely.
Yeah, we don't want to, and again, we used our fingers to screw it on.
Right.
But you don't want to try to fuss too much with the lid so that it can do its own thing when it gets in the canner.
Okay.
So, we ready?
We're ready. Our lid is off. Are you? Okay.
I'll let you go for it.
Oops.
And so all of our, this is something I didn't talk about before, but while she's putting it in, you see there's space in between all of our jars. That's important so that the water has room to move around them. And
so you don't want to cram that full.
No, you want them to have about 1 inch of space between them. And you don't want them, of course, right next to each other.
I'm super gently easing this down because for some reason these little puppies just did not want to stay upright for me.
And so she's making sure that when she puts it in that they're completely submerged under that water.
And we are good.
Good. So now this is a big pot. So our jars are about that tall. So your water, after you put them in, probably, I think it's just about right here on the pot. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be all the way to the top. So now we're good. So they're going to boil. We're going to bring it to a boil and time it for 5 minutes.
So we'll be right back in 5 minutes.
Named one of 5 secret foodie cities by Forbes Travel Guide, Little Rock has a thriving artisanal food scene, great restaurants, and a growing number of craft breweries. Request a vacation planning kit at littlerock.com and see why we say dining is better with a Southern accent.
Welcome back. We took a short break for 5 minutes, did a little bit of cleaning because that's what we do, and now it's time to take our grape jelly jars out of our water bath.
Yes. So I just turn the heat down so it's not kind of boiling up in our face. And take the lid off. Again, you open it away from yourself. Let all that steam out on the other side. Set this down. Now I'm going to use 2 pot holders and actually another kind of utensil because one of my handles is laying down.
Ah, yes.
So kind of pop that up.
There you go. That way you do not want to get your pot holder wet in any kind of way because it will no longer protect you against the heat once it's wet. So you want to make sure those stay good and dry. All right, so that is clipped on to the side of the pan, which gets them out of the water for a minute. And that gives you the opportunity. And again, if you were doing this at home, I heard a pop. I heard a pop. Oh, there's another. I'm going to stand really close so if y'all can hear it. I heard another. We don't recommend carrying it this far usually, but just to make sure that y'all can see the finished product here.
I'm going to try to hold them close to my microphone so maybe we can hear.
I heard another one.
Okay. Let me see. Do you want to get one?
Sure. Oh, that was a loud one.
Yep, both of these popped. And just to reiterate one more time, you want to make sure that you're not forcing them to pop by putting them next to a fan or something that would cool them. You want to make sure, and I think that one's already down maybe. You want to make sure that they just pop on their own and they seal so that you know that it's safe. And if there is one that does not seal, that doesn't mean that you have to throw it in the trash. That just might be the first one that you choose to eat out of, and you use that one in the refrigerator so it doesn't get wasted. But if it does not properly seal, we can't recommend that you store it because it has not completed the process. But these look great. So great. And so if I'm getting down on eye level, I can kind of have some light that's coming opposite of me, and I can see, not through the jars because it's a that dark purple liquid, but you can see the shine coming through, that there's no seeds. And of course we used a juice, so there's not going to be any kind of seeds, but if you are using an actual fruit, that's still what you want to see. It's kind of the clear, glossy looking texture on the inside of the jar. And whenever, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but whenever, if they are judged at the fair, it is safe to take the rings off, just not safe to pop the seal on that lid.
Right, so this one here, I think if we look real closely, I don't think this one's popped because you can still see the bubble in the metal. Yeah. These, oh, there that one went. I hope you got, right as we were talking about it, I think keep our eye on this one for a second. Let's see if it pops while it's out there. But you can see where they were convex at first, and when it makes that seal, it just does pop that little center spot down.
Yes, absolutely. And she's just kind of, whenever she's taking them out, she's just kind of like barely
gently tipping them.
Gently tipping and getting the water off the top. But these look fantastic.
Okay.
And so now what people might, we're going to let these rest. They need to rest overnight so that they can safely be stored for up to a year. But with these, if you want to have fun and you want to give them to somebody as a gift,
there it went.
There it went. I heard
popped.
it.
All of them popped. This is amazing.
This is wonderful. But if you want to make it a gift, like we said, you can take this ring off after it's cooled. They're really hot right now. Put a little piece of fabric, a little piece of lace, then screw it back on. It makes it really festive, look really nice. So you don't feel burdened to eat all this jelly. You have to, give them to somebody. Make it a family effort and everybody feels involved. But
it's a great way to share. And when you've put your effort into making something, I think people really appreciate the value of a homemade gift. So keep that in mind. They also now make a lot more stickers in a lot greater variety than they used to. So the lids, obviously, if you have pretty handwriting, you can use a permanent marker. These lids right here have a place for you to put month, day, and year so that either you can put on there when you made it or when it's gonna expire, and you can write what flavor it is. This particular lid is more decorative, but I was looking, and I don't know if you can, I'm gonna have to pick this up a little bit. But if you can see that the front of this jar has a flat piece on it there, that's the perfect for a sticker. Yes. I know they make stickers just for these, and now they make them that come off easier in the dishwasher.
Oh yeah,
so
I've heard that one too.
With the ability to design and print things at home that are really cute, if you weren't into cutting out a little piece of gingham or whatever to put around, you can have a lot of fun with some stickers too if you're gonna use these as gifts or just in your own pantry. Well, I can't wait. I cannot wait till tomorrow to have maybe some toast and jam, or I'm going to have to just taste both of them. But thank you so very much. I learned a lot today. This is, it's a step-by-step process. It is complicated, and you need to follow it, but it's not hard.
No, it's really, and I think that showed when we did the grape after the strawberries. The strawberry we talked a lot and very detailed, but when you find that rhythm, when you know what to do and how to do it the right way, you find that rhythm and it goes pretty quick.
So the more you do this, the easier it's going to be, and don't be afraid to mess up.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you tune in for our next episode of Chop the Rock, where we talk about all the great food things in Little Rock, some of our attractions, and lots of our restaurants. Thanks so much.